narrative. It's something that we know. A lot of people from Hollywood, I mean, I know that's your crew. They come in and they change the narrative in Africa, and then they sometimes tell their own version of it. What is it that we can do here? And I know I'm an African American, but I'm here in Africa to build capacity among Africans. What is it that we can do here in Africa to protect the narrative? Because we spoke earlier about going to film festivals, you spoke about agents, and you mentioned just off camera the Toronto International Film Festival. Mm-hmm. There are others, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of film festivals that have international filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just about making sure that, number one, you're submitting to the reputable ones and to the ones that admit international filmmakers, because that's what we're looking for.
And in that, how do we here in Africa mm-hmm. protect and bring forth the narrative from the right perspective, or from the homegrown perspective? How, number one, I want to ask how important that is, mm-hmm. and how do we do that? Because again, Hollywood comes in all the time. We did a shoot in August, and we were the local crew that was very much involved. But then when there were important events, we kept seeing all these other places, people from other countries, not just America, filming and creating their own stories about it. Mm-hmm. And then when it's on air, it doesn't look and feel like the authentic African. Am I right? Mm. I call it cultural gentrification. You know? So tell me, how can we, because you've seen some of the things that come out of Africa, yeah. How can we do better at protecting the narrative?
I think if I had the answer to cultural gentrification,
okay,
I would
be. Just my turn.
I mean, listen, I would be.
You might have to clear that up.
Sure.
That's the perspective.
Sure, I get that.
It's like they come here, they film, mm-hmm. and then we don't get the same type of funding behind what we want to get done here.
Yeah.
It's just a struggle. But mm-hmm. when you go to Hollywood, they do it their way.
Sure.
Right? How do we protect? Is there a way? Let me just put it this way. Is there a way for us to protect?
I hope so. I hope so. Listen, I think things have changed dramatically in terms of, and I think it really was led by consumers saying, we want to see ourselves in our lives and the way they actually look reflected on and represented on the screen. And I think Hollywood has heard that loud and clear and has been really, listen, I've been in the business about 15 years now. I've certainly seen a change in how serious networks and studios are making sure that we have authenticity when we're telling these stories, because we know that the consumers are not going to stand for being misrepresented anymore. So I think this is the time to have this conversation. This is absolutely the time to raise your hand and say, what about us? Because we want to make sure that our stories are also being heard. I think, I didn't work on this project, but Crazy Rich Asians is a really good example of that, where, there was an Asian writer who was brought into that process to make sure that they were telling that story from an authentic perspective. And I think I certainly listen. At the end of the day, it comes down to the specific executives and the producers, et cetera, to make sure that they are being held accountable and making sure that they are telling their story in the best way, with authenticity and with organic elements. It really falls to the individual. For me, that's part of the reason why I'm in this business. Is very important to me. And so everything that I do, I want to make sure has that perspective. I think, again, I talked about partnerships before. I think that really is the way to do it. I know that Hollywood has been looking at South Africa as kind of a hotbed for for productions, and we shoot a lot of things in South Africa. So I think it's about continuing to build up the film industries in different parts of Africa so that people, again, Hollywood is it's a who do I know town. And so you're gonna go with a person you know for, I mean, let's take Hollywood out of it. In general, I think people would go with the person they know over a stranger in the street who's saying, no, I can do this thing. You're like, let me ask my friend if they can do it first. And I think Hollywood is similar in that regard. And so I think it's also about building up film industries and making sure that, if we want to film in Ghana, there's somewhere to film in Ghana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For example, in England, there's so many studios and there's tax credits. There's all of these things that make it hospitable for Hollywood to go and film in these places. So I think it's about how can we, and we meaning Hollywood and also in Africa, how can we build a bridge so that we have that same kind of infrastructure? How can we build more studios? How can, we make it more hospitable for Hollywood to want to shoot here? Because once they start shooting here, what'll happen is they'll start using crews from here. And so you'll be on set and you'll be able to say, yeah, that's not what it looks like. That you'll be able to actually have a seat at the table, but also be involved in the production. And so I think that's a really important conversation to be having in terms of infrastructure, because at the end of the day, nothing, I shouldn't say nothing shoots in America, many things do, but I think how cheaply it can be shot for the best quality rules the roost. And so if we can figure that part out, I think that's a really good way to start to build a bridge so that we can bring some of that authenticity home. And then the other thing is just filmmakers, finding more filmmakers who are telling their stories, and more writers who are, again, telling their stories with an authentic brushstroke, and hopefully we can do that.
Hopefully we can. I think it goes back to what you mentioned about distinguishing yourself.
Yep.
And having your content out there and having it noticeable enough for the right people to catch it and see it.
Yep.
And if that's, and you were very candid in saying it could be on Vimeo, it could be on YouTube. Yeah. So it doesn't take much to do it. And that, I think, would be the first step.
Sure.
And making sure that what's authentic, what's pure, and protecting the narrative from this end. And thank goodness for social media for some things.
Yeah, for some things.
For most things, but just to get the exposure.
Yep.
I think that comes back full circle to protecting the narrative. So thank you for that. I think that's some good advice. What y'all think? Yeah. So talk about some of the projects that you've worked on. We want to hear some of the things that you've done in the industry in your 15-year
oh my gosh
career.
It's crazy to say it out loud like that. So I've worked on a ton. I don't know how much you'll have seen, but when I was at Overbrook, I worked on a show called All of Us, which was based on Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith's relationship when they first started dating. So the idea was, how do you co-parent when you feel like you've met the love of your life? How do you figure out your blended family? And that was on UPN, and then it went over to the CW. So I worked on it when it was on the CW. I also worked on, at HBO, I worked on Bessie. I worked on the Immortal Life of
Bessie, starring Queen Latifah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Directed by Dee Reese.
Yeah.
A beautiful African American filmmaker. There was also the Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks that I worked on.
That was
with Oprah.
Yeah, wow.
And then The Wizard of Lies I also worked on. And so that was awesome. It was a great experience. I loved working at HBO. And then at Warner Brothers, I worked on, my first movie was Ocean's 8.
Ocean's 8.
Which is oh great, yeah, some people know that one. I love that franchise. It's one of my favorite favorite Warner Brothers titles. So to be able to have worked on that as my first movie there was so great. And to do the female version of it was pretty cool. I also worked on A Star Is Born.
Okay.
Which
That's
was
very recent.
most recent.
Okay.
And then I have a movie that's coming out. It actually came out on Christmas, but it will be coming out everywhere January 10th, called Just Mercy. And that's Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. I'm so proud of that movie. It'll be out, as I said, at the top of the year. I'm really excited about it. And then on the horizon, I have a movie about Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party that Ryan Coogler produced, that a young filmmaker named Shaka King is directing. Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield are in that.
Daniel is from...
He's from England, but I know that he's also...
in Black Panther?
Yes, he was in Black Panther. He was in Queen and Slim. I don't know if you guys got that.
Yeah, the most recent Queen and Slim. Have you all heard of that one? Yeah.
So he was in that. And then I also have a movie called In the Heights, which is Lin-Manuel Miranda's first play before Hamilton.
All right.
And that's, again, protecting your narrative. It's John Chu, who did Crazy Rich Asians, who's directing.
Okay.
And, that's a movie about Washington Heights and, the Caribbean Latinx community, which I'm really proud and excited about to be a part of. And, that's what I have kind of coming up.
Wow, what a culturally diverse portfolio that you have. I am so proud of you. I really am. I mean, you pulled out some titles. So talk to me about working with these artists. How is that? What's that like, working with like Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx? I'm not sure how closely you work.
Sure,
but
not that close. But not that close. It's great. It's working with your heroes. I always say I'm so blessed because, I left one out. I'm working on this movie called The Witches, which is based on a Roald Dahl book. Yay, some people know this movie. Yeah, it was a movie from I think the 80s or the 90s with Angelica Houston. We're remaking it with Octavia Spencer, and Anne Hathaway plays our witch.
Wow.
And Bob Zemeckis is directing it. And sometimes I just giggle to myself that I get paid to figure out a story about witches. It's crazy that I get paid to do that, and so I feel really blessed.
Yeah.
I also, my mom came to LA, and I took her to the Hollywood Handprint ceremony. You can go, if you've ever been to Hollywood or if you ever want to go to Hollywood, there's this really amazing history of Hollywood where you can see people's hands and feet in cement, and you can see their stars on the board. I'm sure you've heard of this. You can see the stars on the boardwalk. And I took my mom there. We saw Denzel Washington's, and Judy Garland and all these people. And then I saw Bob Zemeckis has a star on the Hollywood, on the street on Hollywood Boulevard. And I took a photo of it. I was like, Mom, I'm working with this amazing director. And, I couldn't help myself in the next meeting. I showed it to Bob. He was really cool about it. But, you're working with these amazing people, and I can't help but be a fan. I try to be professional about it, but in my heart of hearts, I'm a little girl who loves movies, and this is such a cool job to have. I'm so blessed.
I want to talk about how your faith plays in working on secular projects. I know that Warner Brothers is everything, but you mentioned witches, and I was like, oh, okay, it's a blessing to work on a project as big as that. But how does your faith play into that and working with those projects that are, for everyone?
Sure. I would broaden the question out even more and say there's a lot that you have to manage in terms of balancing who you are, who you say you are, who you want to be, and reconciling that with what you may have to do to get ahead in your career. And so I would really broaden that statement out, because I think a lot of times you feel like you kind of have to check yourself at the door, or maybe 50% of yourself at the door, maybe 65% of yourself at the door. And that can be a really hard thing, but it's a necessary thing in some capacity when you're trying to move up. There's some people who don't do that at all and they've just created a lane for themselves, or they just say, you know what, this may not be for me. So I think you have to find what the balance is for yourself. For me, I think I've been really, really passionate about keeping my North Star and keeping myself centered and saying, this is who I want to be. This is who, these are the kinds of things that I have to do in order to be able to look at myself in the mirror and still feel, proud is a sin, happy to be in the skin I'm in, right? So, I think whether it's working on secular projects, whether it's, the way African-American females are represented in movies, the way that my culture is represented in movies, it's really important for me to take a stand on things that I feel are, the opposite of the kinds of messaging that I want to portray. And I think it's just about picking your battles, right? If it's too, if it's outside of your beliefs and it's outside of not just your beliefs, but again, how you define yourself as an individual, it's so important to hold on to that, because I definitely have seen people that started out as one thing when they came into the business and then they turned into a completely different person because they felt like they had to in order to get that seat at the table, and I never wanted to do that. And so I think what you have to be okay with, though, is that there are some opportunities you're going to miss because you're not going to do you're not going to give of yourself what you need to trade in to get those things. It's okay for me to not have those things. And so I think it's just about taking, stock of what you think is important. If it's more important to you to have, this in your career, et cetera, than it is for you to be who you say you are, then, you just have to make trade-offs and choices.
And that's the balance.
Yes.
Knowing who you are.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the balance.
Absolutely.
Wow. This is good.
Yeah.
This is good. We could go on. But I want to get some questions in.
Okay.
You guys have questions? Yeah? Hi, everybody. It's Kay Stokes, General Manager and Executive Director of Dominion Television. Listen, thank you so much for watching our YouTube channel. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and tell all your friends about the quality Christian lifestyle content that Dominion TV has to share. See you again soon, and may God richly bless you. Keep watching.